Thom Hartmann here with you. Boy, have you seen the leaked transcripts of Donald Trump's conversations with Peña Nieto? How do you say his name? Peña Nieto? You know, the president of Mexico. You know who I'm talking about, even if I can't pronounce his name correctly. And my apologies to President Peña Nieto. There we go. This is from the transcript on the wall. This is Trump, right? This is the phone conversation that they had, like, a week after he became president, or in the week that he became president. On the wall, you and I both have a political problem. My people stand up and say Mexico will pay for the wall, and your people probably say something similar but slightly different language. I have to have Mexico pay for the wall. I have to. I've been talking about it for a 2-year period. And NATO says, no way. He says, my position has been and will continue to be very firm, saying that Mexico cannot pay for the wall. So then Trump says, but you cannot say that to the press. The press is going to go with that, and I cannot live with that. Oh, my God. This man is our president? It's incredible. I mean, just incredible. I don't know how to say it beyond that. There's so much in the news today. There's so much for us to cover today. And, if you have thoughts or comments you want to share, feel free to give us a shout. Brian Pruitt is going to drop by a little later on. It should be an interesting conversation. And but I want to start out with Missouri. Missouri is arguably, the Missouri Compromise. I think you could draw a straight line from John Quincy Adams going back into the House of Representatives to, well, actually, this even precedes that. I think you could draw a straight line from, the institution of slavery through the Missouri Compromise to Dred Scott to the Civil War. And so, Missouri was a very, very pivotal state. And when the Missouri Compromise, it was basically they were going to let 2 states into the Union, and we'll make 1 slave and 1 free, right? And that's what a compromise. And when Jefferson learned about this was in 1820. He had been out of the White House since 1808. He died in 1828. He was an old man. He was in his 70s. He was arthritic. He was actually preparing for his death. And when he learned about the Missouri Compromise, that they were going to let Missouri be a slave state, he freaked out because he had spent, and I realize this defies a lot of, conventional bumper sticker wisdom, but he had spent, even though he was a slave owner, had spent much of his life fighting slavery. It was the first piece of legislation he introduced as a young man into the House of Burgesses in Virginia, was to end slavery in Virginia. They punished him by passing a law that if any of his slaves escaped, they would be the wards of the state or if he freed any of his slaves, they would become wards of the state for 2 years and then subject to resale. So, he got slapped down quite a few times on this. But anyhow, he writes this letter to Congressman John Holmes of Massachusetts. It's April 22nd, 1820, 6 years before his death. Yeah, I thought he died in 1820. Apparently, he died in 1826. He says, I thank you, dear sir, for the copy you have been so kind to send me of the letter to your constituents on the Missouri question. It is a perfect justification to them. I had for a long time ceased to read newspapers or to pay general attention to public affairs, confident they were in good hands, and content to be a passenger in our bark to the shore from which I am not distant. In other words, he's going to take the canoe across the river Styx. He's going to die. Right, a very kind of literary reference. But this momentous question, like a fire bell in the night, awakened and filled me with terror. I considered it at once as the death knell of the Union. It is hushed indeed for the moment, but this is a reprieve only. See, he's saying, okay, so the Missouri Compromise, but they're continuing slavery. This is going to be a disaster for our country. So he continues, it is hushed indeed for the moment. But this is a reprieve only, not a final sentence. A geographical line coincided with a marked principle, and this is the line in Missouri, right? A geographical line coincided with a marked principle, moral and political, once conceived and held up to the angry passions of men, will never be obliterated. And and every new irritation will mark it deeper and deeper. And then he went on to say, but as it is, we have a wolf by the ears, and we can neither hold him nor safely let him go. Justice is on one scale and self-preservation on the other, which I think ultimately was the thinking of most of the slave owners back in those days. And, all the more the tragedy for America. But Missouri is back in the papers with a new draconian bill that so threatens people of color in the United States that the NAACP just issued their first ever national international warning about traveling to Missouri or living in Missouri. This from Think Progress today by E.A. Crunden. People of color and other minorities have been warned not to visit the state of Missouri after Republican Governor Eric Greitens signed a draconian bill into law that directly threatens minorities. The organization also advised extreme caution to both travelers and minorities currently living in Missouri. This is SB 43, and basically what it says is that as an employer, you can fire somebody for bigoted reasons. You can fire somebody because they're gay, you can fire them because they're trans, you can fire them because they're black, you can fire them because they're Asian, you can fire Hispanic, whatever you want. See, this is, make America white again, right? This is the whole conservative shtick, Trump shtick, the whole thing. And employees are blocked from suing the individuals responsible for any alleged bias. Only businesses themselves can be sued. It removes whistleblower protections for Missouri state employees. And Missouri NAACP President Nimrod Chappell Jr. has since called the measure a Jim Crow bill, an intentional nod to racial segregation. So this is black students at the University of Missouri have been subject to racial slurs on numerous occasions. A June report indicated that black drivers in the state are 75% more likely to be pulled over than their white counterparts. Chappell says this is the legalization. This is the NAACP president in Missouri. They're legalizing discrimination in the state of Missouri. Now, Texas is getting ready to pass similar legislation, or actually, I guess has, because of the passage of SB 4 in Texas. Well, actually, it's not so similar. This is legislation that targets so-called sanctuary cities. They issued a travel advisory back on May 9th about that. So it's like, it's back. Anyway, it's troubling. It's troubling. Steve Miller yesterday had a meltdown in a press conference with Jim Acosta, and just went off on how the Statue of Liberty, the little plaque, the Colossus, the new Colossus poem, was not actually part of the Statue of Liberty. We got the Statue of Liberty in the 1890s. The new Colossus poem was added a decade later, thereabouts, and doesn't reflect Americans' values, essentially. As Victoria Jones notes in her newsletter this morning, it's a popular refrain among white nationalists. Stephen Miller's comments got an enthusiastic response from white nationalists on Twitter. David Duke, a vocal Trump supporter and former imperial wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, devoted a chapter in one of his books to Emma Lazarus and the Statue of Liberty, saying she wanted to turn America into a refuge for the cast-offs of the world. White supremacist Richard Spencer made a similar point in January on Twitter. Stormfront.org, a popular website among white supremacists, has numerous discussion threads on the subject. The subreddit for President Trump supporters, which frequently pushes white nationalist memes, also has a post titled, "Does anyone realize the poem inscribed beneath the Statue of Liberty is not in fact law?" Another of Miller's tangential arguments, which didn't seem to make any sense to the people in the press room. So strange goings on here. Well, it's not even strange. I mean, this is just how far do they have to go with this dog whistle racist rhetoric before the people in America say, hey, enough, that's not us. I have a horrible feeling that they have a long way to go. Trump is still floating in the high 30s in terms of approval, which is pretty damn shocking. And the ongoing process of basically the deconstruction of a progressive United States, turning us into the Confederate States, raises the question, did the South win?
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Because it's sure looking like it. It's like the Republican Party has become the party of the old Confederacy. So, we're involved in these long wars in the Middle East. And there's a lot of discussion about, I think this is the longest war that the United States has ever been in. These wars that George W. Bush lied us into in Afghanistan and Iraq. And, he didn't lie us into the one in Afghanistan. We went in cheerfully after a fair amount of media coaxing. But the fact of the matter is that the Afghan government, Mullah Omar, offered to arrest bin Laden and turn him over to a third country for a trial. And George Bush said, nah, I'd rather bomb your country. And so we're still there 15 years later because George Bush was an idiot who wanted to have a war. And, well, he wasn't an idiot. I'm sorry. I shouldn't call people names. But he was utterly without ethics or honesty and clearly didn't have a good grasp of foreign policy or what happens when you invade and occupy a country for 15 years. And Don Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney wanted to try out their libertarian experiment. They desperately needed a country. They tried this in Chile. It didn't work with Pinochet. They tried this in the United States. It didn't work with Reaganism. Sam Brownback tried it in Kansas. It didn't work. So they wanted to try it in Iraq. Take down the government altogether and let the wonderful, magical marketplace come in and fill that void. So we talk about this long war. But, when I opened the show, I was talking about how the NAACP has issued this travel ban in Missouri, or not a ban, a travel warning to people of color about going to Missouri. And it's a long war. This is the war about slavery that is still going on in the United States. We are still trapped in a battle, a debate around slavery. Now, we don't call it slavery anymore. Now it's Jim Crow, but it's all about the racialization of white power. That's probably a redundant phrase, but this is, it's the white supremacists and the bigots continuing that war. I was amazed this morning to discover that the Department of Justice was created in the 1880s under Ulysses S. Grant, ostensibly to move forward Reconstruction. But in fact, what it served to do was to stop Reconstruction and institute Jim Crow laws. And so now the Justice Department is being run by Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III. What an irony, and how neatly do those things tie together.